Hey everyone, and welcome to Groove Builders, the show where we create together. I'm your host, Disorderly Cone, and in this episode, we're going to be building our very first vehicle here on the show, the HyperSports vehicle from Genesis Technologies. Now, this comes to us from our friends over at Crazy Toys, and if you haven't checked out their website yet, you definitely should. They got all kinds of really cool models on there, some of them kind of hard to find, with some great prices and really fast shipping. Now, Groovers, after today's episode, if you're looking to pick up this model, look no further than the description down below for a direct link to Crazy Toys' website. Groovers, this build has been known to give people a really hard time because of all of its exact shapings and, of course, really hard to grab tabs. Groovers, I'm extremely excited for this build. Let's go ahead and get down to the workbench to take a look at our package.
Groove Builders, welcome to the workbench. Let's take a look at our HK Genesis Technologies HyperSports vehicle. This is not a HyperSports vehicle, it's a dark portal. I wonder where this came from. Let's try this again. Our HK Genesis Technologies HyperSports vehicle. There we go, that's the one we're looking for. Now, looking at the top here, we see we have a 4 out of 5 star rating, which means this guy might be a little difficult to build. At the very bottom here, we have a QR code which we can scan to get a 360 view of our model if we need it while we're building. This can be useful for putting different parts of detail onto our model and seeing how they actually go in. Now, on the back here, we get a brief look at our metal, followed by some assembly instructions, but we're going to go into more detail about that during the build. Groovers, let's go ahead and open up our package. We have our instructions, and we have our 3 sheets of metal, all nicely wrapped in here too. Let's go ahead and open up this too. Our 3 sheets of metal. Look at all this detail we're going to be assembling, and they even have numbers telling us which parts are which. That's going to be very useful. Groovers, let's take everything out and go ahead and get building. All of our pieces needed to get started. Now, looking at the instructions, the first thing I'm already seeing is that this build really requires us to make sure that all of our bends are very accurate. And I think that'll be the key to building this easily. We're going to start by shaping this roof here. Now, all this detail does come together, but we do need to make sure that it's slightly bent. So we're going to do each side one at a time, but try to parallel everything we do to each side. There's our first tab of the build. And secured. We're going to see how all this comes together in a moment after forming our next pieces here, which is our windshield. This goes in on the front. And you know what I'm going to use? I'm going to use our tab bending tool to make this a little easier on us. That's a lock right there. Now we got to do the other side. And as we do that, we're going to slightly bend this piece. See how I did that with my fingers? Very easily done. Nothing crazy. And we're going to also bend this up. So much easier to use this tool, and I forget sometimes how well this tool really does grab the tabs. This little tool here you can actually pick up at Crazy Toys' website. There will be a link down in the description. I'm going to try using this more in this build if I can. Now we need to add part number 3, which goes along the bottom part here. Now the 4th piece actually cradles this, so we need to make sure that we bend number 4 as well. There we go. Again, this tool makes it so easy to make everything come together. It really does. It's really nice. Now this piece goes on in between. But before I can secure it on, I need to actually bend these tabs up. I really want to make sure that I'm putting this on the right way. That's the main thing. I don't want to have to take this apart at all to replace parts or anything for it. So there's one. When we're done the model, we might come back to these tabs and secure them differently so they don't stand out on the car. This is like it's a finished product part. Now we can move on to part number 5, which is also used to help form that back up. Again, just taking the time to form this piece correctly. With this model, it's very important to double and triple check your instructions before installing any of your parts. I really mean this. You don't want to take apart these models to fix anything, so double checking is always worth your time. Pushing on both sides when I'm twisting my tabs so that they're really secured in place. These guys here, just secure them with a nice little twist. Okay, now you want to make sure that you guys have a cascading detail here going on. Mine's not the greatest at the moment, but if that's what yours looks like, then you are okay to move on to your next step, which is forming the bumper of our vehicle, I believe. And what we're going to do is grab our two pieces just like this, bending these tabs on either side straight 90. I love how it says supercar. Now with this piece right here, you want to go down like this and then like that. I'm going to secure them with a twist. Might have to change that though. There's no indication on exactly how you're supposed to secure these tabs on this build. There we go. I'm not even sure about how to go about this piece here. I'm going to put this like this. I'm just bending everything down here to make sure that it all lines up correctly. I feel like this is another build that you need to take a lot of breaks on too, because if you don't, I think you're going to get frustrated and make mistakes. Now these guys here get secured in. I feel like this is going to be a pain in the butt. This build's a pain in the butt. I can feel it. Alright, we're moving along I think pretty well. Now we need to attach part number 9, and part number 9 looks like it's going to be pretty interesting to form. It has a lot of unique pieces in detail. Like, look at all this. Okay, well, let's get started by using our tweezers and just slowly bending each part, following the instructions as we go. This is the only way to do this part correctly. Again, just bending this slowly. It's so easy to mess this up because the amount of edge detail on this piece, you can very easily misform it, and that could really ruin your day. Now, I think the best way to approach this is to start on one side and then work my way over to the other. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to fast forward the whole process so you guys aren't waiting the entire time to see me come about it. Let's do a little quick little, there we go. Okay, that's our bumper kind of formed. This is not an easy build, and I know I'm going to have to do a lot of tidy up work, I feel, at the very end of this to make it look nice. But we're progressing along. We're going to need more parts now, though, before we go any further. And our next few parts. These guys are pretty simple to actually form because all we're doing is bending them down and then attaching them to their detail right here. So again, forming these down. And we come on the inside. There we go. Now we're going to do the same thing for this one right here. Excellent. Okay, now this piece here is formed very uniquely. So you need to double check your instructions before building it. Okay, so that's the first step. Straight 90. Then just a little tiny bit above it on the next fold line, we bend a slight up. Okay, so now that we got that nice angle, we're going to move up to the next line, and this goes directly back. Now this has a very similar bend to it. We bring it down, straight 90 again, going as close as we can to the metal, and then we move on to the next little line there, fold line, and bring it down. So there we go. That's a pretty good formation of what we need. Okay, now with both these guys just pressed back a little bit, we can attach our next two pieces, which are tiny bits of detail. Now we're going to bend them at the fold line. It's pretty easy to do because they're so small. Grab our little vent here. This side first. We're still a little thick, but I might be able to win. So we'll try it here. Cool. There's our first little bit of detail in. Now we're gonna do the same thing with the other side, and I'm gonna skip that part of the video for you. I think that's pretty good. Now we need to continue putting detail on this piece, and it's gonna be these guys right here next, which could be a little tricky because of where they're going. Excellent, we got her in. Okay, now I think it's very imperative that we secure our tabs as quickly as possible as to not lose this positioning while supplying even pressure on both sides. Okay, we got one, let's do the other. Push on this. There we go. Now we're all connected. Now I'm pushing out a little bit on this here to kind of help with the formation because this looks a little bit odd to me. But we are doing our best as always. Okay, I think I'm pretty happy with this right now actually. Let's go ahead and connect our lower bumper now, which this could be very difficult too because of how much detail we've already added to the structure. I said difficult, but I am just able to really easily attach these in. That was pretty impressive. Okay, so let's go ahead and start securing these tabs. I like it when things like this kind of come along easily, although I feel that we're not out of the water yet. I feel like we still got a long way to go for this build here. There we go. Our bumper is all connected. It looks a little crooked, so I might have to do some work yet to get everything to work later on down the road. But let's keep powering on and we'll correct things as we go. Now, let's get some more parts. Our next few pieces, these are our wheel wells, and I'm only going to build one for you on camera, and then because the other one's exactly the same, I'm just going to fast forward that. So the first thing we're going to do is get these tabs into these small little insertion holes by bending these tabs out just a little bit on either side towards us. Now if you look at that 360 picture, one thing you'll realize is that this actually, these tabs actually go on the outside and then are bent up. So we're going to bend this, again just doing small bends all the way down, not forcing anything. You can see on the back here they have all this little scoring. That's to help you get that nice shape. Oh, there we go. Cool. Got it. Okay, now that we got this piece, we're going to bend this one down first. And yeah, there we go. Nice and secured. And the second one. Alright, now we're going to do the same thing with this piece right here. We're going to take it and we're going to bend it along the seam, being very careful not to create any hot spots in that detail that's up here. Okay, there we go. A little bit more of a bend there. Okay, now we got this one wheel well done. Before I move on to shaping the other one, I'm actually going to attach our two back pieces here, and it's probably something I should have done already, but we're going to go ahead and do it now. So these top vents here on either side go on top, while this right here goes in the middle. So with all of our tabs bent down here, we're going to be very careful not to scratch our metal, and we're going to attach the far ones first, and then once we've attached everything on, we're going to do the outer tabs. There we go. Our one side there is in there pretty good. Let's go ahead and secure these tabs. Now these guys here are going to be a little bit more tricky. Doesn't mean they're impossible. This means we're going to have to be patient and not force this metal. Remember, if anything doesn't really work out, we just got to keep bending and reshaping up here, and that should help us get our tabs in pretty simply. And these top vents are just secured with a nice bend on either side. Okay, and that is our part all nice and attached. Now as we go, I won't be surprised if I have to reform this back here a little bit to help me get pieces in. I think this whole build so far is really coming down to actually being able to form everything exactly as it says in the instructions. Let's continue on by adding that wheel well we just made and putting it on the side of the car. Okay. Let's go ahead and secure these back tabs before I go any further and just give them a nice little twist. Nice and secure. Same thing with the other one. Awesome. Now this up here goes to the top and into that little hole. Awesome. Awesome. Looking really smart. I like this. Okay. Back tabs first. Our back is looking pretty good. Again, at the end, I won't be surprised if I have to go through and reshape some parts here, but not too bad. We need to put this interior pieces in now, and these are formed very simply just by, of course, bending our top over like this, and then forming this over, and then we're going to match the seams going all the way down. Okay, so once we got a nice form like this, we're going to go ahead and attach it on the inside of our car. Now again, being very important not to attach that bottom piece, we're just going to tent this tab here. Alright, I think that's everything. We got both our parts on either side. None of these tabs here are connected, they are loose. That's very important as per the instructions. Let's get more parts out and continue building. We have all of our pieces for our door. Now, of course, we're going to be building 2 of these, but I'm only going to show 1 on camera because they're basically built exactly the same. Now, again, just like all of our other pieces, it's very important to follow the instructions to make sure that you're getting the proper bend. And rather than using my tweezers, I'm going to actually use our little bending tool here and see if that helps me get a better bend than I've ever gotten before. Wow, that looks pretty good. Now the bottom half, which has been pretty similar to the other side. There we go. That's more of a defined bend. Now that's about the shape we want to have, just so everyone can see that. I'm going to show up a little bit close. That's the shape you want to have when you're bending this door. Now we need to move on to forming our mirror, which is pretty simple. We're going to be doing a cylinder with this piece right here. But first, we need to form this little bit of detail, and then we're going to insert this into that little cylinder. Let's see if we can get these little tabs bent all over. Great. Now that this is formed to my liking, we're going to go ahead and insert this into our part here. We're going to go that way. Yeah. Are we locked in there, Groovers? I think we are. My glove's getting all mangled, but we did pretty good. Now we got to get this cylinder, which might be a little difficult because I won't be able to put any tool in there to get that cylinder. So we're going to have to rely on our skill level here to be able to do it. So I know it says to twist them, but maybe you twist them and then fold them down. That way you can get the shape you need to, because you can't get a good cylinder otherwise. And if this is the door hinge, which I think it is, you really need this to be a good shape, or else that door is not going to open up properly. Now that our hinge is done, we can move on to other parts of our detail, which involves this little piece of the door. Ta-da! Okay, now this piece right here needs to be formed, which is again a lot of bending small pieces. And I'm going to use my detail tweezers here to really help me get these small bits. I'm not kidding when I say it's small bends. I'm literally grabbing a millimeter worth of metal here to try to bend it correctly. That's insane. Okay, I think that's all of our small tabs bent. Now we got to add this little bit of detail onto our door. This. Pressure, twist. A little bit of pressure and a twist. Excellent. Now we got to put our door hinge on here. Okay, nice twist. Okay, she is on. Now we need to form our mirror here. Again, matching up all of our seams to make it look nice and pretty. This little bit of detail gets bent ever so slightly down and then back up to match up with that seam right here. Excellent. Okay, now that we've installed that little mirror on the side and we got our door hinge and everything set up, we can go ahead and put everything together to make our first door. Now, I'm starting with these top tabs, but that may not have been the best idea. Okay, that's our door all formed, but we need 2 of them, so I'm gonna put this down and do that other one real quick and we'll get right back at her. And there we go. All right, we have both of our doors done now. Let's move on to our next part, which involves way more pieces. With all of that cutting out of the way, we have all of our parts for the hood of our car, and we're gonna be starting that off by forming this piece here. Okay, so looking at the instructions, we basically want to bend this guy back a little bit, and then this guy back a lot more. And then these guys come down on either side. I might wait until the next step to fully form everything. I feel like this is a section of the instructions where I'm going to have to do my own thing because it looks pretty complicated. Okay. I like that. So now we're going to go ahead and grab this piece here and attach it onto the side. I am going to twist this temporarily. There we go. Then this gets bent right here. Whoa. Why did it do it like that? Okay. I think that's our first side form there. Do the same thing with this right here. Okay, both sides of our detail are now connected correctly. Let's move on to this little grill here, which we also have to bend very uniquely. Now, I'm exaggerating these bends. We might have to go back a little bit later and fix them. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's see if we can get this piece in here without any trouble. That little detail is right here, so we're going to bend that like this, and then this like this. Okay, now we can insert this into our main grill. Excellent. Okay, now I know it told us not to bend that back tab, and we haven't. So now that we haven't done that, everything should fit in pretty smoothly here. Okay, now once we get all of our tabs connected, all we have to do is just secure them. And I'm going to start by doing one side and working my way, I'm going to start working on this side and then working my way over. Now that was a little bit more difficult than it needed to be, Groove Builders, and I probably fast forwarded this entire part. But yes, making sure that we have these 2 connections right here, 1 and 2, not twisted in any way, shape, or form. We're ready to move on to our next piece that needs to be formed, which is the big wheeled wells right here. Now the way we go about doing this is just slightly bending this, but the instructions tell us to hide this tab, so we're going to bend it down ever so slightly like this, which should create a lock. And as we bend our metal more and more, we should be able to get that tab into where we need to go. Now this is secured with a twist, so let's twist that into formation. But we have a very close hot spot here, so we need to work on this a little bit more. Okay, I'm pretty happy with this part here. Now we can move on to connecting it to our hood, which is going to involve these tabs here being bent down. And now we're going to work our way all the way around the tabs and bend our other part. I'm going to fast forward all of this because it's very simple and straightforward to do. It's just connecting all of our tabs into the insertion holes, working away one at a time. Making sure all of my tabs are nice and secure. I think we have it. We need to secure this guy right here too, these outer tabs, these big ones. And the reason why I tell you not to secure them until the end is because you are actually putting more than one part through them before you secure them. For now, it looks pretty go. All right, that is our hood, and I think it looks pretty good, but we definitely need more parts. So let's get them. And this is all of our parts needed for our last part of our first page. Now this particular part here, part 38, is formed very particular. You have to follow that little tiny picture there. So I'm going to do my best to do just that. Now looking closely at the instructions, I can see that this part here needs to go, needs to go forward. And then just like this. So it was forward and then back. And then these guys get folded right back at their fold lines. One. This guy here also goes straight down. And these are bent kind of like this. This is a hard one. I think this is something that I'm going to have to form a little bit later when I have some more information from the doors. Nice shape there. I'm going to bend that like this. Do the same thing on the other side. And then we're going to bend this part here back. Our last part, just like that. There we go. That's part 38 all formed up. Now let's get working on our door. Back part is more of a slanted shape. That's what that first picture tells us there. So I'm going to try to go for a nice little warp with my fingers. Just pushing this piece here on the door. I'm trying to get the right shape. Again, just pushing that all together. Excellent. Now this side here is formed a little bit differently. This is a little bit more complicated. So I'm going to first get that really drastic bend out of the way. Boom. And now this one's slightly bent, which I think it's pretty much already done. Finally, that last part. Great. That looks just like the picture. So with that, we can move on to the next part, which is this little tiny piece here. I don't understand why the instructions here say not to bend this part, but I'm going to go ahead and do it just to make my life a little bit easier and hope that I don't accidentally screw up the formation. Sometimes I'll do a small little bend first to try to help the tab in, and then I'll push a little hard on the other side, and then I'll do my twist. Excellent. Okay. That's our first door done. I'm not entirely too sure if this is going to be exactly the way that it needs to be. So if I have to reshape it a little bit later, we're going to go ahead and do that. But I'm going to fast forward now to when I have both sides of the door and I'm installing it onto part 38. And our second doorway. Now, Groove Builders, one thing I did mess up on is I put both of these tabs down here in the frame. Don't do that. That was wrong. You only have to put one tab in here, and that's that big long one right on there. The other tab is just free and it's back here. Be very careful handling this part though. If you do that, make that same mistake, it can become very brittle, and I'm actually very delicately handling this piece as we install it onto part 38. Now, how we do this is just line up the tabs along the sides and put one in at a time. That's the best way to always put these parts in. Now, like I said before, the shape may not be exact, so putting these tabs in might be a little hard, but we're having some really good luck here. It looks like I did a pretty good job guessing the general shape there from the picture. You want to play games? You do. Okay, there we go. Cool. All right, that is our part all shaped up. Let's get more pieces. And now all of our parts for our interior. And I think this might be a little challenging with all the unique pieces of detail we're forming this time around. Now, these parts right here go into the center, and you have to make sure that each one that you're bending is going into the right way. So using this right here as a reference, I can hold this and compare it to the pictures on the instructions. Is bending this like this, getting a good shape there. And then I'm bringing this piece over. Either way, there's the first part done. We're going to do the same thing with the other side now. But we're going to make sure to bend it the opposite way. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that now. Let's go ahead and put everything together here like it tells us to do in the instructions with some nice twists. Take our last tab here and give a nice little twist. There we go. Now we're going to take these little edges here and meet them all along the side, and that should take away these nice gaps that have been formed in that detail. It really is kind of hard to guess how they're formed until you put them on, so keep that in mind when you're building this little step here. It might not be perfect the first time, but afterwards you come back with your tools and you can really make it look nice. But again, it's going to take some forming here to do that. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, yes, that part fell off again, but don't worry, we'll reattach it a little bit later. I just don't want that tab to break, so I let it fall off and stay off for a little bit. Let's move on to the next part, which is forming this little piece of detail. There we go. All right. That right there is now secured. Let's take our doors, and these doors are put into these little holes that we made earlier. Now mine are a little bit too far bent back, so I'm going to correct that a little bit. Door, whoop, not upside down, that would be weird. There we go. Now once they're inside, we don't twist these tabs, we're gonna actually fold them out on either side. So let's do this. There we go. Our two doors nice and secured. This is really looking pretty sweet now. Now we need to insert the upper part, which is going to secure these doors in place. And I think this might be pretty difficult because of where these tabs need to go. And what I'm going to do first is secure the door, and then I'm going to put the tabs in. I'm definitely going to need my persuasion tools to get this piece in. Guaranteed that will twist you. Same with you, sir. Boom. Now you're secured. What do you say about that? Not much, because you're tabs. All right, she's looking pretty good, but we need to keep forming our interior here, and that involves our steering column, which we still need to make. Grabbing this little thing here, we're going to take our smallest tool that we have, and we are going to try to make this steering column almost perfect. Now, before I started making videos, I actually made the Batmobile, and one thing I messed up was a little shifter that was inside, and I could never find the part after I lost it. Now, it was a very small part, and I didn't really want to bug Metal Earth to get me a new one because it was such a small little thing, but man, these pieces always seem to be the most difficult. I wonder if I have anything smaller than this. The handy dandy mandrel. Let's see if this one's any smaller. Ooh, it's a fraction smaller. Well, let's see if we can help it out here. Solid looking. Oh, wow. Look at that. Groove Builders, we did a really good job with this cylinder. Handy dandy mandrel. This guy comes in handy more often than you would think. Okay. Steering wheel first. Little push. Okay, there we go. Now with our seam down, I'm going to make these guys a little wider to make my life a lot easier in a second here. Okay, let's put our steering wheel in here. Boom. Okay, now we've installed our steering wheel. We can go ahead and form our last little bit of detail, which is this little cone piece, which I have a perfect tool to help me with that. I almost formed that the wrong way. Now, go. Cool. Now we got to form this little piece here correctly, which I think will be pretty easy to do. If I can grab it. There we go. Point that up. And now I'm going to install this in that little cab we have here. And this, I think this is going to be an interesting little part for us to do here. Now these ones go on the outside, so it's very important to make sure you secure these tabs in the proper spot. If you don't secure them in the proper spot, you're going to have a hard time in the next steps. And now this piece here comes down and we put it underneath. Holy shoot, that's a pain in the butt. Let's bring her down. I should have actually formed this probably a little better before I got to this step. I probably shouldn't. See how bent and distorted now that looks? Not very good. Don't do what I did there. I'm going to try to bend this out now, and I'll cut back to it when I have everything the way I like it. A nice little twist here. And okay, I think we're all sorted out. Oh yeah, that looks way better than it did. There goes that part again. Okay, let's attach the top part now and bring this whole thing together. Our front end, and our back end. These are all secured with twists as well. And because of that, I'm going to use my twisting tool. Okay, so this tab is actually inside of here. Or how am I supposed to get in there? That's a very tricky tool to have. That's a very tricky tab. This is turning out to be very interesting. Both of these tabs on either side really should be secured before this detail goes in, but there's no real way to do it. So what we're gonna have to do is basically pull back the detail, secure the tab in place, and then bend the detail back. But it's gonna warp the metal pretty bad, so I'm gonna try my hardest to do the best job that I can, but just be aware that when you're going into this step, these little side tabs here are gonna be pretty hard to secure. All right, finally got those back in order. Not too bad, but again, something you definitely want to know that that's a pain in the butt. Now, the next couple pieces that we need to secure is this side bit of detail right here, which, again, it told me to insert on an earlier step, but you really could wait and do it later. There's not a necessity to put it in at the time that it tells you to. Okay, and that is our side detail all attached. But again, I won't be surprised if we have to go ahead and reattach this or figure out some forming here, especially because I have a nice little gap on this side and I don't have one on this side. Let's go ahead and bend this top tab here now. This is the last tab we need to form and get in position. Now we're going to insert this hood. Maybe like this a little bit. There we go. These doors aren't as secure as I thought they would be. But hey, that doesn't look too bad. Alright Groovers, let's get more parts on the go here and see if we can get on the final stages of our car. All of our parts needed for our next section. Now the first thing we're going to be doing is folding our piece here and making sure that these little angles go up ever so slightly, just like that. Pretty simple, right? Now, of course, we're going to wait till a little bit later to make sure that we have the proper orientation before we get too crazy. But I'm pretty sure that that detail you want on the ground for what's going to be going on here. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now we can move on to our chairs. Our chairs here are formed pretty uniquely as well. We're going to start with the back, keeping that flat base there. We're going to turn up either side. One. I'll trip a little bit more actually. Same thing with the other side. Maybe not flat enough, yeah. Okay. Same thing with these. There we go. I like how these are looking so far. Again, if I need to adjust them, we can always do that a little bit later. The next piece we're going to be doing here is the actual seat bottoms, and that's just by forming this little piece into a shape like that. There we go. Now we gotta take our chairs here and insert these tabs. These tabs are done with a twist as well. Cool. Okay. Now with our chairs all formed, we can go to the next piece here. What I like to do is try to get everything formed first before we put them onto our main piece. Tab number 55 here, or piece number 55 here, is formed with just these little brackets faced up. This is just all undercarriage detail, I believe. Pretty happy with that. And then finally, these two guys here. Cool. Continuing on with our forming here. Now these pieces get a little bigger. That bent way better. Okay, there's our next piece. Now these guys here are very small cylinders. Hoping that my little guy here will be able to help us out again. If not, we're gonna have to get my mandrel out here and give her another go. Really trying for that nice shape. I want something consistent all the way around. I want a really nice cylinder. Okay, I think we're good there too. Awesome. Now with this piece here, all of this nice detail we want to be able to see. So I'm going to make sure that goes on the bottom by bending all of our tabs like this. Then finally we have 2 more cylinders to form. Now these guys here I really don't want to mess up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start big and then work my way down in size. Now how we're going to do that is I'm going to start with purple here. Okay, I think we're good to go. Now that's all of our pieces formed for this page. Now we got to connect everything to our main area here. So I'm going to put these on the side and we're going to start off with our chairs. Now these chairs get placed right here on either side, and you got to make sure, because there's so many different insertion holes on the big part of 51, you need to make sure that you're putting them in the right place. Our chairs look pretty secure. Now we can flip this over and start adding some of this detail on the bottom. I had a feeling this piece was going to come back to haunt me, and here it is to haunt. I know this was all formed a little weird. This will be an interesting piece to place on here. These exhaust pipes here should be put on before the chairs. That'll make life a lot easier. So that's a pro tip for anyone watching this now. Not too many people actually watch my videos all the way through, so if you're seeing this part, it's kind of like a special club you're in right now, where it's just me and you doing this. But yeah, definitely secure these tabs before putting the chairs on. That'll save you a lot of headache. There we go. Cool. This is really coming along. I mean, just look at everything here. Now we got to put these guys in, which are supposed to be our wheels. I wonder if these are actually going to be able to turn when everything is said and done. Anyway, let's continue on. The bigger, longer one here goes in the back, while the shorter one goes in the front. So again, bigger one here in the back. Well, I'm going to have to close it in a little bit more. Trying to be as fair as I possibly can on either side. Great. Now I'm going to move this aside here. We're going to use our detailed tweezers. See these little tiny tabs right here? Well, this little tab here we got to grab. And that's why we have these really fancy dancy little persuader tweezers here to get right in that little tiny hole and just boop, pop that little tab out. Grab it. Yeah. You're going nowhere. There, now all of our pieces aren't going to be going anywhere, and they do freely spin, so maybe our wheels will spin. Interesting. Let's get our last set of pieces. And just like that, we have all of our pieces finally cut out for our HyperSports vehicle, and I'm not going to lie, I can't wait to get this complete. This build seems to be going on forever, and the amount of detail that's really involved with this build is quite surprising. Now, talking about detail, we need to start forming our smallest bits first, which is just these little caps over here. And of course, we know we're going to need our mandrel to get this size. So starting at the lower end here. Okay, last bit of that little detail done. Now we can move on to, of course, putting them into these little areas right here. Now it's very important to make sure that those little pieces here go into the center and not into the sides. We're going to need our detailed tweezers to help us with that. Now we close that cap, and we're just going to work it all the way around. There we go. Keep this going. Okay, that's all of our little guys here formed. Now we grab these guys here, and we're going to need to grab the tabs in the middle, and we're going to do that the same way we did before with our persuasion tweezers here. By applying a little bit of pressure, it just pokes them through enough where we can grab them and bend them back. Once you've gotten one, it's really easy to grab the others. Okay, now let's take this guy right here. And matching all of these little insertion holes on the outside, we're going to put our tabs into those insertion holes, which I think is going to be pretty challenging considering how many insertion holes we have to go. Okay, now I'm going to do 4 more of these, and then we'll continue on too. All right, there we go. Our last little bit of hubcap detail all complete. Now we can move on to making our wheels, which are pretty straightforward. We want to take this insert right here and place it in the middle of our wheel track. Now, I've already turned this into a cylinder using my doming tool, and I locked it, and that's when I realized I got to put these inserts in. And that's what happens when you rush a little bit, groovers. So again, take your time with these builds. There we go. All right, we made her. Now we got to put our tab here. Are you kidding me? Come on, get in the hole. Get in the hole. There we go. Okay, there's the tab. Grab that tab, and I'm going to bend it over. Now, I'm assuming these wheels are going to move. So if the wheels are going to move, I'm not going to twist these tabs. I'm going to bend these tabs. Now, we're going to disguise any ugly mistakes we see here by putting our rims right over this. Okay, that's our last wheel. That means all 4 of these guys are good to go too. We can put our wheels onto our car. Groovers, this is a big moment, a really big moment. Holy crap, these are actually not as easy as you would think to secure, and the reason for that is because both of these require you to hold on to either side. So what I'm going to do is actually put both on and see if that becomes easier for me to secure these guys. Yeah, that's way easier. So there's a pro tip for you right there. Make sure that when you're putting these wheels on, to put both hubcaps on first and then twist your tabs. If you try to do it one at a time, you might find yourself hurting your fingers like I was doing there. Awesome. That's all of our detail there now on there. We get to put our wheels on. Here we go. And what I should have done, and I didn't do, was make sure that try to make sure that all of my seams are on the same area. I didn't do that. And so I hope it doesn't affect the end product too much. But another pro tip that was something, if you wanted to build this better than the way that I'm building it, I would say make sure all of your pieces are going the same way. Make sure all of your treads are going the same way, like this right here. And then that way, all of your seams will match up. So you can pretty much hide them when you're displaying them, because all the seams will be either behind the wheel well or wherever you want to, however you want to pose this car, you could hide the seams. Ah, that's so cool. All these wheels moving. All right, now we can attach the guards. We're going to take it like this. These guys require just a nice little shaping like this. This is probably going to be too much of a drastic shape, but I figured if we get them all the same, then we can work with them when they go into their place. These are pretty much all the same, but you need to make sure that you're putting the right one in the right place. Go here. And again, like I said, the shape I have here, which is a general shape, we're going to do more shaping when we're inside of everything and we can manipulate our pieces a little bit better. Okay, I think that's all of our wheel wells done. That was a pretty interesting little step. Again, it's very important to make sure that you put all of these in their proper spot. Even in the beginning there, when I was saying how important it was, I was actually putting the wrong piece in, which it seems like I've done that a few times in this build. I don't know. Let's keep on going, groovers, and hopefully this time I won't miss any more pieces. Okay, the moment of truth, putting our car together. Oh, groove builders. I'm going to start on the one side here and work my way over. I think that's best. Okay, making sure all of our tabs are nice and flush. I think that's the key here. Now, one thing I did kind of wrong, as you can see, is I kind of squished my vehicle when I was trying to get all my tabs. Be very careful not to do that. You don't want your vehicle looking flat. And of course, you know, these tabs and things in the metal can take a little bit of a beating. But you don't want to make any hot spots, you don't want any warps, and especially with this particular model, because it's a sleek sports car, you really want those nice edges, and you want those nice sleek curves. So be very careful not to accidentally squish any of that detail you've worked so hard to complete. I can't believe I accidentally did that myself. There we go, all filled out on that side. All right, you know what I'll do? I'll lift you up a little bit, and there we go. Oh, wow. All right, groovers, let's check her out. That's our car, all nice and complete. She rolls back and forth, I think. Yeah, look at that. Woo! She rolls. She moves. She moves really quickly. Aw, yeah, we got a new toy to play with. Not a Hot Wheels toy, but a metal model puzzle toy. Genesis Technologies. This is pretty cool, guys. I'm not gonna lie. Now let's take a look at these awesome little doors here and see how well they open up. So let's see. Boom! Suicide doors. Aw, yeah, look at that. Okay, that looks really cool, groove builders. Let's get back out and talk about this model.
We're not just gonna drift, we're gonna Tokyo drift. Look at my awesome suicide doors. Shwing! We did it, everybody! We built the HyperSports vehicle from Genesis Technologies. And this model was definitely a lot more involved than I was originally planning, and I have to admit, this video took a lot longer to edit than I was originally planning. Nevertheless, groove builders, if you're looking to build this model, there are a few things you're going to want to know. Let's talk about those things in construction. For my first point, I want to talk about the importance of making sure all of your parts are formed exactly to the instructions detail. Groovers, I know that's pretty basic. I mean, we try to follow every bit of shaping through all the models that we build. But with this particular build, it's very important to follow exactly what the instructions say. And that's because there's so many parts that go really close together. And if you're not careful and you maybe miss something or maybe even bend something slightly out of shape, you'll end up with some really big gaps. And that was one thing I found at the very end I had to do, was go over my model about 3 or 4 times, just trying to close all the gaps that I found. And I think that if you're being really accurate with the instructions, you might not have as many gaps as I had. So keep that in mind as you go. For my second point, I want to talk about securing all the detail here along the bottom of the car and the seats themselves. Now, groove builders, besides these 2 big plates here that go on either side, the rest of the detail I would really recommend securing on before you attach the seats on the inside. And the reason for that is because all of these tabs, except for these 2 big panels here, are actually pretty hard to get to with the seats already installed. It's not impossible, and if you do scrape anything, it's not really that big of a deal because all of that is really covered up by other pieces of the car later down the road, but it's still something to think about. If you want to make things a little bit easier for yourself, again, just secure all the bottom detail except for these 2 big plates, then do your seats. This will make your life a lot easier. For my third and final point, I want to talk about securing all the tabs on our HyperSports vehicle. Now, with any 3D metal model that we make, for the most part, the instructions tell us how to secure our tabs. And with this build, it's actually extremely important that you follow the instructions when it comes to when to secure your tabs. Oftentimes throughout the instructions, I actually made a mistake thinking I was supposed to secure a tab, and I went out of my way to do that, only to find out that I wasn't supposed to, and I had to go back and rework some detail, and this made my parts very brittle. Don't do that. Take your time with the instructions, and when they tell you to hold off on bending a tab, hold off on bending that tab. At the very end, when everything is assembled, you can always go over your model again and see if there's any tabs that you might want to change. And for the most part, on this vehicle, I think they did a really good job with how the tabs are secured. Most of them are purposely built, so make sure you follow the instructions extremely closely. And with that being said, groove builders, let's move on to build time. The HyperSports vehicle from Genesis Technologies took me just over 4.5 hours to build, with the majority of that time being spent manipulating my camera and of course trying to form all these really unique pieces in the car. Now Groovers, I think that's going to be about average for most builders out there, but I wouldn't be surprised if you guys can do it a little bit quicker. Now I think it's also very important to mention that I never think of these as a race, and I don't think you should either. These parts can be very difficult to build, and if you rush this model, you might find yourself not being able to complete it. And finally, Groove Builders, my thoughts. Groovers, I have to say, I really do like the HyperSports vehicle from Genesis Technologies. It was a really cool build to do, not just because of all of its unique shaping and maybe some of the more difficult pieces that I encountered, but the overall design is really nice. I love the fact that the wheels roll around when I move it, and of course the ability to open the doors is a really nice touch. I can't recommend this build for new builders out there. That's just because there's so many difficult pieces here that I think might give people out there that haven't built a whole lot some real frustrations. Even for me, I found myself a few times getting frustrated with this build as I went along, and that's just because of all that unique detail, shaping, and of course the pieces being so close together. I think any metal model builder out there who's looking for a good challenge will love this build, and that's really who I want to recommend this for. If you have a couple of metal models under your belt and you're looking for something that's a little bit more challenging, I would say look no further than the HyperSports vehicle from Genesis Technologies. And with that, Groove Builders, we're at the end of our show. I had a really good time building the HyperSports vehicle with you, and if you guys had a good time, don't forget to press that like button. For more videos like this, hit subscribe as well, as we got all kinds of really cool content coming out in the future. If you're looking to build the HyperSports vehicle, look no further than the description down below for a direct link to Crazy Toys' website. Groove Builders, until next time, keep building. Now I'm gonna go blow this thing up so I can take it for a spin. Alright!